أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to Talking Points by Ahlul Bayt TV. This is a show where a local community gathers with youth, with elders of the community to discuss pertinent issues in conjunction with the Birmingham Barca Youth Network, KSIMC of Birmingham and Ahlul Bayt TV. The purpose of this event is to discuss topics which affect us in our everyday lives, topics which we face in day-to-day situations, and topics which will allow us to progress or to hinder as a community, depending on how we approach these issues. The first topic, inshallah, we're going to be discussing today is looking at racism within our community. The concept of racism is something which is very abstract, which people have different opinions about. You have prejudice, which is the act of thinking of another race or determining that another race is perhaps inferior to your own. And then you have discrimination, which is acting upon the prejudice, where you in some way, shape or form take some form of action where you say that, okay, so-and-so is not allowed in our community, or I cannot hire so-and-so for my business, or I will not allow my son or my daughter to marry someone from a different race. I think many of us hope that this doesn't exist within our communities, but at the same time, I don't think we can deny that it does. I personally feel that it's something we are faced by. I feel that it's both institutional. We can find it with the Hawza. We've discussed this with Sheikh Nuru Mohammed before. But at the same time, on a grassroots level within our own communities, there are communities around the world who do suffer heavily from racism, where we perhaps don't welcome people from different races, reverts into our communities, perhaps as well as our brothers and sisters from Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah. And it's a talking point. It is a discussion to be had. Do we welcome people? Are we open-minded, or is there a slight taboo? Is it generational, or is it inherent within our community? Are we taught to be racist? Are we taught to be perhaps aware that another race is not as competent as our own, or is there a slight inferiority complex or superiority complex that we hold? So inshallah, I'd like to invite Sheikh Nuru Mohammed, our esteemed guest speaker and resident alim, to start with a short introduction as to what he feels, and then inshallah we will have an open floor question and answer. Ahsan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الغر الميامين المنتجبين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We thank Allah once again for witnessing the second segment of this talk show or interactive section with our brothers and sisters. No doubt we have important topics to discuss tonight or this afternoon. And the aim of this is to get brothers and sisters talking and asking questions that are difficult to them, to get the answer, for us to be able to answer them. So the first one is about racism. This session, brothers and sisters, is not a monologue session. It is a dialogue session, whereby I will expect brothers and sisters to come in with their comments, with your understanding of what racism is all about, and how do we tackle it. My responsibility or my task is to be able to provide Islamic perspective, and in order to be able to guide and direct the discussion properly. In a very simple term, when we talk of a racism, it is a situation where there is superiority complex over others, where someone feels, irrespective of what the reason might be, he is superior over others, and as a result, the person tends to undermine others. That is a simple definition of racism. And of course, there are so many causes of racism, as you all know. The common one is racial, color. Thus, I'm black, you are white, you are yellow, you are pink. And by the virtue of being white or yellow or pink, you tend to undermine someone who is black. And unfortunately, as Brother Ahmed mentioned, I also concur with him that we as Muslims and as lovers and followers of Ahl al-Bayt, we suffer from this. We go through a lot because of our race. People tend to be sidelined because of their race. I know of places, I'm talking of Shias now, where people are not allowed to enter mosque and pray because of their color. It is happening in this 21st century, unfortunately. Hence the need for such a session, the need for dialogue. No doubt there are so many people, thousands of people across the globe will have the opportunity to listen to this program. Another form of racism, which is a cause, and it is happening, I'm just trying to open up the discussion properly, is the continental form of racism, whereby if this person is from these continents and that one is from the other continents, by the virtue that is from that lower continent as we perceive, people tend to undermine him. And today, unfortunately, very unfortunately, you have Muslims, by the virtue of the type of a passport a person is holding, he tend to undermine someone who's holding a different passport. Very serious, because I've been with people and I continue to be with people and I travel with people a lot. Sometimes when people sort out passports, they say, no, this is blue passport, it's heavy. This is pink or red passport. This one is green passport. You know, people tend, even when you go to Hajj, unfortunately, you find our own people sometimes, the way people are treated, they are treated based on their passports. And this got to a point of even some authorities within Islam. When you tell them, I'm from this particular country, you get sorted within a short space of time. This is also a form of racism. To such an extent, in some part of the world, our madaris, children of other colors like black people, are not allowed to go. So therefore, we do have it. And it is affecting us big time. Let's now hear from you. Do we have it in your own perspective? If yes, what are the experiences you have faced when it comes to racism? And what do you think we should do as communities and as leaders of the communities and as youth and mothers and fathers of our communities should be able to curb this trend of affair? Thank you.
Ahsan, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So the floor is open to you, brothers and sisters, to what you think of this issue. Is it something which firstly does exist? Have you experienced it? Do you think it's perhaps more pertinent in the West where we are, or have you found it more in the East, in our countries of origin? And more so, what can be done? Is it something which can be solved overnight? Does policies need to be put in place by the Jamaats? Or is there something which can be done to change the attitudes of the people? Is it generational? Do we find it more in one age group more than the other? So yeah, the floor is open to you. Your thoughts, your points. Please feel free and open to share your thoughts. Please kindly raise your hand if you do have any points you'd like to make.
There has to be an institutional
right?
drive, and if it doesn't come from our own community leaders, then there has to be some sort of international level.
Okay.
Be that at World Federation level, be that you have the Al-Khoi Foundation, be that even at Maraja level.
Okay.
Where they give guidance that you need to open up your doors, otherwise we will lag behind. We're already lagging behind. A good example is the comparison with the Ahl Sunnah. Ahl Sunnah, you can walk into any mosque and pray and no one will look at you. At our centers, unfortunately, you will have a few heads turning. which
Yeah.
shouldn't exist.
That's a fair point, fair opinion. Thank you for that. So the brother, just for the sake of the crowd, if you didn't hear, the brother mentioned that in the Khoja community prejudice does exist. It's constitutional. He gave the comparison to the wider world and gender equality and participation within politics. I wanted to hear a point perhaps from the sisters.
Yeah.
Anything you feel is worth mentioning in this discussion, particularly on the discussion of membership? Is it something where, I mean, we should say, look, such and such community is specified for so-and-so tribe or race or culture? Or is it something which should transcend origin?
Yeah.
Any points perhaps from the sisters?
Let's hear from the sisters now.
Yeah. If you like to, microphone.
Propose that the two centres should be combined. But I think a realistic target would be to have more inter-community events.
Yeah.
So to hold events like this, for example, if we look around the room, the turnout is mainly Khoja.
Yeah.
So perhaps if we get all of our communities together and have a collective debate,
Yeah.
it might help unity. Also, this division in our centres feeds into the whole marriage thing, because our matchmakers are within our Khoja community, so
Yeah.
we don't even know people from outside. There's also the fact that people in the generation above us, I don't know any Iraqis who are married any Khojas, and I think that's the same for most people. So perhaps if the president was set, it would be more realistic
Right.
to expect.
Just a point. I mean, I'd like to know your thoughts on this. So you mentioned a really strong point about inter-community events and activities. Do you feel the concept of inclusion goes symbiotically and plays in hand with racism? Is inclusion and
Definitely.
taking part?
I think discrimination stems from ignorance.
Right.
So people are scared of those who they don't know or those who they don't associate with.
Okay.
If we bring communities together and they get to know each other, I think that's something that can be easily eradicated over time. Of course, it's
And
not something that
inshallah
happens
would be
overnight.
able to be a solution to
I
the
think
problem.
so. I don't know if anybody disagrees.
Any further? Yeah. There's a point from Doctor. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Is it working?
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's okay. Yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. I would like to raise 2 points, but before that, incidentally, there are not only Khoja Shia centers and Iraqi Shia center. There is an Iranian center, Markaz al-Imam al-Rida center is a Shia, and there is the Husseiniya center in Small Heath. And there is another center, is not a formal center, Afghani center. And for the benefit of everyone, the Afghani Shia community is the largest community in the West Midlands. They are over 5,000 persons.
Yeah.
Probably the estimation about 10,000. However, I go to my points. The first point, I think generally speaking, this is the human nature. We tend actually to live and be comfortable with our social comfort zone.
Right.
And we would like to stick to that, even if it conflicts with the religion. There are many examples, and actually, all the points which are raised tonight, it is within this context. For the benefit of the time, I don't want to go in details. And the second point, if you look actually again for the Shia history, if you look at our Imams alayhim as-salam, we have a number of Imams who they are ma'soom, and as far as I'm concerned, they are ma'soom, and their words is the words of the Rasulullah, and the words of the Rasulullah is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
And those Imam, their mothers were not Arab, were not Quraysh, were not Sayyid, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, the Ummah, the Islamic Ummah, has cut off the Imams. So they did not, the Imams and the followers of the Imam, the close followers of Imam, have not been actually given the opportunity to promote this beautiful concept of equality, of cooperation, of understanding each other, and of implementing the famous ayah that إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَابًا لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. And thank you very much. If there is a time, I will
Thank you.
contribute.
I think, Hassan, thank you to Dr. We've raised some really interesting points. We've discussed everything from possible solutions to understanding the dynamics of our own centre here, to talking about whether it's convenient to marry within our own culture and community or perhaps not to. I think on that point, on the topic of our Islamic history and religious history, I'd like to bring in the Sheikh to understand your points, whether you feel it's something pertinent.
Yeah, I think there are three main issues raised here by brothers and sisters when it comes to the question of racism within Muslim communities or within the Shia communities. And before I go to point out these three issues, I think, yes, also within the Sunni communities there are racism. I was a Sunni before, and I still have a lot of friends who are Sunnis. I sometimes interact with them. Of course, some places, if you go by virtue of being Shia, you get sidelined, but that's something else. That's understandable, because we are told insan is enemy of what he or she is ignorant of. So that's normal. But we do have racism also existing within the Sunni communities in the world. But my personal experience tells me what we have in the Shia communities are more compared to the level of racism within the Sunni communities. And I think we need to have more dialogue when it comes to these issues in order for us to be able to eradicate, if not completely, but partially, this racism. Number one issue is the question of marriage. That, yes, is very difficult. We do not see it happening where our communities encouraged people from different races to marry people from the same community. But you know what? Lack of this today is forcing some of our daughters and sons to stand even against their parents to go and marry those that they want to marry. It is happening. I don't know how many people call me from the other side, meaning not formally way of Jamaat. I want to get married with this person, Sheikh. It's either you help me, or if you leave me, I will go somewhere and get married. It is happening. No doubt, as some of the brothers mentioned, it will be good to marry the person that you know. So maybe that is the reason why we find our cultures, our communities encourage we should marry within. But Islamically, you are free to choose whom you think is good for you. Islam outlined the criteria that you can marry if somebody has this quality, if somebody has this quality, and that quality, and that quality. The problem is you find some members of our communities or our communities, they want to make it like a haram and prohibited to marry people from other race. Today we have people who are getting married to Christians. In our own communities, raised from good family of Shia, Khoja, Iraqi, Irani. They said, no, I want the person to convert for me to marry. It is happening. And it is gaining a lot of momentum. So rather than going and marry somebody else, it's better you get another Muslim from somewhere and marry. But it needs dialogue. It's not easy. It will not happen overnight. It will need dialogue. The second issue, of course, is not embracing the rivets in our communities. And we hardly have even programs for the rivets in our communities. Many people ask question, why do we have to give prominence to rivets? It's because when you change, you get sidelined by your entire family. So you will need those who claim to be like a Muslim, like you, Shia, like you, to welcome you, to give you that moral support until you settle. And if you go to many places, our rivers are struggling big time. Big time. Because they come to Shia mosque thinking that they will be welcomed. You find people hardly stand up and go and greet them and ask them, where are you coming from? What's happening? Can I offer you help? Don't make them members. That's not a big deal. Personally, I will speak to that. It's not a big deal to me. But embrace them. Let them feel at home. We don't have it. You have only few handful in the community who do that. And what happens eventually? The rivets say, look, I think I've made a wrong choice. I've made a wrong choice. So let me just go somewhere, be with my family, and do what I want to do. So that is a problem also we need to look into. And the third one, of course, is the question of the membership. This is not only within the Khoja community, to tell you the truth. We have it within the Iraqi community. We have it within the Irani community. We have it within different communities. That certain community you go, you cannot become a member. Yes, you can come and pray and go. But to become a member is a mission. So these are the things that we need to discuss. And I think Islam, when it came, it found a lot of cultures. Some of the cultures were approved by Islam and others were deleted by Islam. Racism has no room in Islam in whatever form. Yes, we can maintain our identity as Pakistanis, as Khojas, as Iraqis. There's nothing wrong to maintain your identity. You can maintain your identity. You can do things the way you want to do it. Like for me as a black person, when I go back home, there are certain things we have in common as black people, which we do. And we have Lebanese doing their own things, Iranis are doing their own things. But at the end of the day, we should be mindful of the fact that Islam said, upon maintaining my identity, there must be something where all of us can come together and do it as one person. Sometimes you find a big program, because it's not handled by Khojas, Khojas don't know about it. Like today, there is a program here in Birmingham. I heard about it. I didn't know. Somebody just told me now. Like it's a big program. But we didn't know here completely. Why? Because it's a different race which is handling that program. Same way when we have our programs here, people from Husseiniya, if they are not here, they wouldn't know. We need to maintain our identity. Islam agrees to that. But Islam says you can still also come on one common ground and build. And I promise you, if we go by maintaining our identity in a calculated form, we will see the power we have as Shias. Just now we had Afghani about 5,000. Khojas here about 2,500 or so. You have Husseini about 500 to 1,000 people. You have Iraqis. When last did we come together under one umbrella for one big program? We have Rivet. There are so many people of Rivet. We're meeting them on the 17th of this month to have discussions. When did we have one program where the organizers come from all different parts? We have Al-Mahdi, Al-Hawza. When did we all come together under one umbrella? So there is racism, and we need to work on that, inshallah. So I leave you with this beautiful ayah which Dr. mentioned. Allah said, we created you, males and females, tribes and nations, just for you to recognize that the best amongst you is the one who fear Allah the most. And Prophet attacked racism because people who were close to him, like Abu Dhar, like Bilal, they were black in color. And irrespective of the contribution they were making, people were looking down upon them because of their color. And Rasulullah said, even if a person is Habashi and is God conscious, he is better than Hashimi in the eye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Thank you to the Sheikh for his very valuable points towards the end. I think he summed up everything we mentioned quite well. The topical stuff we've discussed, inshallah, requires much further conversation. Inshallah, we will hopefully have a space for this in coming weeks, months and years to keep challenging this issue, because it is an issue. Inshallah, we'll come to solutions. Once again, I thank you for your participation. You've been watching Talking Points by Ahlul Bayt TV. Please join us again next time where we discuss another topic. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.